So, Mr. Mirek Dušek from Davos, the Economic Forum, thank you very much. Dr. Somduta Singh from India, and Ziva Eger from Israel. Okay. Okay. Hello. So let me introduce our esteemed panelists. About Chris, you've heard a little bit. Dr. Somduta Singh, co-chair, there are lots of acronyms coming up. NASSCOM Product Council, advisor to Karnataka ITBT Ministry and Government of India, and serial entrepreneur and investor and founder and director of Huntsman Group. Great pleasure and honor to have you with us. Mirek Dušek, head of Middle East, East and North Africa, member of the Executive Committee, World Economic Forum in Geneva. Thank you very much for coming and joining us. And Ziva Eger, head of Invest in Israel in the Ministry of Economy and Industry and Israel. And Chris Fabian, who you all met, thank you for your participation. And again, good morning, everybody, and welcome to DLD. Just to let our foreign guests know, this is autumn in Israel, and since this is Israel, no, winter is not coming. My name is Oren Nahari, and I'll moderate this panel. Now, the headline for this discussion was Making the World Better Through Technology. And I'd like to raise the question, and I'm fully aware that the audience here is not receptive to this kind of question, but still, I'll raise it anyhow. Does technology, by definition, makes the world better? I think it is neutral. I think it is blind. It makes the world better. It can also make the world worse. In the same technology anywhere. And I'm not talking about the obvious. I'm not talking about Facebook, who can bring together communities of gardening lovers and fantasy lovers, and also pedophilia and jihadists. This is the obvious. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, let's take something that we all agree is great, MRI, but used in some places to determine if the coming up will be a boy or a girl, to decide whether to have him or not. And when I was in school, I was taught with pity, you know, about the poor sods, the Luddites, who at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution didn't understand that the Industrial Revolution, that technology will make the entire world better, will help them as well, and they tried to destroy the early machines. We all laughed about them, but they were right. They knew that the Industrial Revolution will benefit mankind, but it will destroy them personally. That the weavers and the sewers and the teamsters will not be able to benefit. They will lose their jobs. And it is not only a tech problem, it's not only an economic problem. These days, it is a political problem. It is a humanitarian problem. It is for the general good, perhaps, that somebody in America or in Europe will lose his job, so that 10 Bangladeshi will have their jobs. It is for the greater good, I agree. But the 10 Bangladeshis do not vote in France or in Michigan. The unemployed do, and we have to remember it. And what will happen when practically everybody will not have the skills, the coming skills that everybody needs these days to have a job? Maybe 50%. Maybe 70%, maybe 30%. We have to prepare for that, and we have to do it right now, I think, my opinion that. And I'm talking about the economy, the globalization, the technology. It's great for the people sitting here. It's great for the globalists. It's great for high-tech investors. It's great for hedge fund managers, but not for everybody else in the dying towns that are staring them in the face. And the result will be, and we see it already, we'll see it in a rise in religious fervor, in more conservatism, in more skepticism, and of course, more demagogues and more populists the world entire over, from the right and from the left. So after this semi-doomsday prophecy, I'd like to invite each of my guests to make a short intro to this big issue. First, Dr. Singh, please.
Shalom, everyone. Boker tov. I'm trying to pick up a little bit of Israel, Hebrew, and there's a reason to it. I come from a nation that shares the same kind of history as you guys do. Hebrew dates back to the 1200 BCs, and so does Sanskrit and Hindi. And it's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Oren, for the lovely question. One of the things we've always debated and talked about is that, is innovation and technology the same thing? Well, I think innovation comes from the need for survival. Technology is just an application of the science. Innovation not necessarily always transfers into technology. Sometimes innovation may be just in the way one lives, in the way one thinks, in the way one reads, in the way one interprets. Technology is more scientific. You can't have a dated technology and try and apply it for the rest of your life if you're not innovating constantly. So with that, I want to set a few parlance. Where does innovation really come from? There are three important aspects that one needs to keep in mind when we talk about innovation. Innovation comes from freedom. Have you ever thought or seen a country that's innovating that is not free? Both India and Israel have had the same kind of history in terms of the imperial rule that we have gone through, the kind of invasions we have fought, and the kind of cultural parlances we have been able to establish to hold on to our freedom. Freedom comes or innovation comes when you're free to think, when you're free to evaluate, when you have judiciary and constitutional freedom. Innovation comes when you have economic freedom. Think about a country that has been able to innovate and diversify and monetize if it didn't have the ability to establish bilateral trade, cross-border trade, internal businesses, being able to subsidize, being able to co-invest, and kudos to the Israeli government, which fosters and harbors innovation and allows so many great minds to come in. I've read this somewhere, and I think it was a phrase by King Solomon where he says, "The mind of a Jew is his jewel." And that mind comes from the need for survival. So the freedom, both in terms of constitutional and economic, makes one strong. The third and the most important part of innovation, or rather being able to ideate, comes from cultural freedom. I went to Jerusalem just 2 days back. I went around the place. The place just soaks you in and tells you the kind of effort that has gone into sustaining the value system, the ethos, the sentiments that you guys have been constantly trying to get robbed of, but still hold on to it. Cultural freedom, being able to speak a language that is so ancient and still hold on to it, kudos. That's innovation. Innovation is not about letting go of the old to let the new in. Innovation is about building on the foundation that you already have and trying to lead a life that is sustainable, that is evolutionary, that is growth-oriented, and then comes the concept of monetization. We live in a world where everybody is trying to establish supremacy. Everybody is saying, I'm better than you. How can you make a better world, Oren, when you're trying to divert your mind by trying to establish one over the other? Innovation, it comes from unification. You need to leverage each other's strengths. Well, in India, we don't have the kind of, we boast of a 100x bigger population than you guys do. You're 9 million, we are 1.2 billion, we're great at that. You innovate at a faster rate than we do, and we want to learn from that. Your education system harbors innovation, and we want to learn from that. But we have the same heart and mind of accepting people just like you do, and that's why I'm on the stage today. So innovation is about being free to be able to think, be able to culturally and economically establish yourself, being able to share your knowledge with others, and it can't happen in isolation, and that's what I'm going to talk about and say, let us all unify our strength and leverage our strength, then try to portray that we are better than one another. You can't make a better world in isolation. It has to happen in unification. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Somduta Singh. Mirek, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the great contribution just now. Thank you for the great introduction. I represent an organization called the World Economic Forum. We were established in 1971, And I think until recently, we were most known for Davos. So we gathered the top companies, political leaders, civil society leaders. Well, I would submit to you that over the past few years, we're also known for something called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And it reflects an important shift. Our motto is committed to improving the state of the world. And it has become clear that technology, to the theme of this session today, technology has become just more consequential to this mission. And the World Economic Forum, through the concept of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, came to recognize that and coined that concept. What do we mean by it and what do we actually focus on? We think that societies, more developed, less developed, decision makers, CEOs, politicians, everyone is confronted with technology more. Our chairman, Professor Schwab, describes it as a tsunami. So there is a tsunami that is overwhelming societies. If you open a newspaper, even if you're not interested in technology, you read about technology. So there is this huge imperative to really understand technology and understand its implications for society. And again, be they in more developed or less developed economies. So really there is this tremendous pressure, and I would submit to you that there is this huge educational opportunity to really explain and think through what these different technologies and their convergence mean for the different societies. And we just need to make it a little more tangible and give it some more thought. So that's what we are focusing on, if you will, really looking at the consequences, how impactful these trends are for society. Now, obviously, it's quite a tough job because unlike the Industrial Revolution where the Luddites were relevant, this revolution, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, has a much bigger pace or faster pace. It's more complex, it's more connected. And so while you may always do scenarios and other research papers, we really focus on the dialogue between the different decision makers to be able to help create a proactive environment around the impact of technologies on society. For us, what is really important is that we don't face a situation 10, 20 years from now where too many people in too many societies feel left behind by technology. And we do feel that we are at a moment where everyone needs to be educated, needs to be interested in technology. And there is a lot of opportunities, there is a lot of downside as well. But what is important here is to be on your front foot, to be proactive, and understanding the landscape better is a good start. Now, that's not enough. And so the other thing that we're doing, which is related to the Fourth Industrial Revolution, is that we have established a startup, a center on the Fourth Industrial Revolution in San Francisco. I live in Geneva, and we're based in Geneva, while we are now having an offshoot in San Francisco. What we are doing there is that we are looking at agile governance of specific technologies. And so we are now in the phase of scaling up a team of people that will be connecting some of the people from the Valley, civil society organizations, international organizations, and the governments to really think through what is the agile, and I would like to underscore that adjective, what is the agile governance around some of the technologies like AI, Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles. So we're not focusing on the technologies themselves, but we feel that there is a gap in terms of how people think around both the opportunities and the risks of the different technologies. To give you one example, and just to drive home my point around this is for both developed and less developed economies, there are a number of countries that are, for example, want to become the hub of drone traffic in their region. And so they would be working with our team in San Francisco to really look at what would the policy landscape and the regulation, if you will, look like if a country that may have some gaps in terms of the traditional infrastructure wants to move and leapfrog to a drone-based delivery of many services in that country. So just to illustrate what we're looking at and the importance of the societal impact of technologies.
Thank you very much. And again, Chris Fabian, please.
So if the question is technology by definition good? I think the answer is clearly no. Like, very few things are by definition anything. It's in practice that you see something develop, whether it's good or bad. And I think in practice, we've seen that technology that's developed along a set of principles can create enormous amounts of good in the world. UNICEF has been part of developing these principles of innovation, and you can Google like UNICEF principles of innovation and see them. And they say things like develop your technology with the end user. Make sure that you're being open about what you're developing so other people can learn from it, and so on. And I think that these principles are really important. We're moving into a very dark world. And I think that as exciting as technology can be, people who are able to see a little bit into the future, people like Jack Ma from Alibaba, who said 3-4 months ago, Jack said, the next 20 to 30 years for humanity are filled with more sadness and pain and suffering than they are with happiness. People like Kai-Fu Lee, who is one of the greatest investors in China, who say that a few nations which control a lot of artificial intelligence will fundamentally change the dynamic and separate a small number of people from the rest of the world. These people are able to see something which is very worrisome and should be worrisome to all of us. And that's that there's a divide that's growing. I highlighted a few issues. These are, climate change and lack of access to jobs. And any one of these by itself would be easy to deal with. But we're entering an era where many of these shocks are coming at the same time. And so as we try to look into this darkness, and we think about how do you teach kids to be prepared for the jobs of the future, maybe we need to look at how you teach kids to be prepared for a future with no jobs at all. And that's a very difficult mindset to adjust to. I think I'll just quickly end on this idea about drones. We have set up 2 drone corridors, UNICEF with 2 governments in Malawi and Vanuatu, for testing drones. We talked to your colleagues in San Francisco last week. In Malawi, we've set up a 6,500 square kilometer drone corridor with the highest vertical airspace, 450 meters, in the world for testing. And that allows big companies to come in, or startups, and test their technology in a place where they could eventually do business. But it also allows us to ensure that those technologies are built to serve the world's most vulnerable people. That they're built with business cases in mind that can make the world fundamentally better. And I think that they're built along that set of principles that I mentioned. So any technology by itself is pretty not useful. Technology built with humanity in mind, I think, can have an impact on a darkness that's coming quite quickly.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'll say that it's not only, it's not that teaching the kids about a world without jobs. I mean, the whole humanity. It's a revolution that will change everything from inheritance to families to immigration to whatever. I mean, we are built on hundreds or tens of thousands of years that you got up in the morning and went to do your work, whatever it was. You had a purpose, so to speak, without being a Marxist. If it comes to that, we are going to some place that were never explored before, and I'm afraid it'll be a little bit different, but we'll come to that in a minute. But first, Ziva, from the home team.
Thank you, Oren. I'm Ziva. I'm the head of Invest in Israel in the Ministry of Economy and Industry. I don't think that we have to tell those people what innovation is, because they know it. I mean, actually, they're here in the DDLD, the annual conference in Israel that present Israel, as always, as one of the leading countries in innovation and technology all around the world. So thank you first for being here. We really appreciate that, because we believe in Israel that innovation stays not within our borders. We share innovation with the world. We make sure that we spread it all over. And when I ask myself, why is that? I think it comes from 2 reasons. One is economic reasons, business reasons. Those days, you cannot exist if you are not international company. In business, there are no borders. Second, it's the moral point of view. We In our DNA, we have the Tikkun Olam. We bring light upon all nations. And every time we find out something, we have a breakthrough, we make sure we share it with the world and give good thing to the world. In the government, we call it tech for good. I agree. Technology, it's not innovation. Innovation, it's the end use of technologies. You can have a lots of different end use to one technology. Now, let's talk about technologies and innovation that brings good to the world. Let's talk about water. One of the challenges of this world, I don't know if you know, but by 2050, 66% of the population are going to suffer from shortage of drinking water. Let's talk about health. Now, Israel, since it has been established, it has a lot of problems with water. As you'll know, in this region, we don't have that much of rain. And we had to start in developing new technologies to recycle wastewater. If you told me, Oren, that 20 years ago that we're going to export water from Israel, I would laugh about it. But now look where are we? And we have joint venture regarding water technology with California, with Arizona, with India, with China. We share that and we become a leading country in water technologies. Look about ReWalk. Do you know ReWalk? It is established in 2001. ReWalk has been established. Robotics medical device that helps people to get up on their feet when they're disabled to walk and start walking. Look at the given image pill that you swallow and take x-ray of your stomach, okay, in order to avoid operations and get to your body where none of a regular x-ray can do so. We have plenty of examples and products and solutions that Israel bring to billions of people around the world in order to improve their daily lives. So yes, Oren, I think that technology might not necessarily bring good to the world, but innovation, and we can direct it, and we can target this specific technology to specific problems that we have all around the world and share this knowledge and know-how and create a better world.
Thank you very much, Ziva. I'll add to that of course you are right, but when I look as a foreign news editor at South China Sea and Korea and Ukraine, I'm not so sure that borders do not exist anymore, and that's one thing. And innovation, I'm writing an article now, and for that I looked at John Harrison, who invented the chronometer as to know at what latitude you are in the sea, and others. Innovation was always there, even technology. The pace, of course, is accelerated in ways that we cannot imagine. So now for the discussion, and we have a short time, so please, relatively short answers. And I'd like to begin with you, Dr. Singh. First of all, a question that is unpleasant since it implies perhaps that not all humans are the same, and I'm not going to clash of civilizations or whatever, but is innovation, is thinking, is culture between East and West, between, let's say, India and the United States or India and China, is it different? Is culture and country and traditions, do they change the way of innovation and their thinking, or is it one of the same in the world over?
I think that's a brilliant question you ask, Oren. Firstly, I would like to add to the point you said that borders do exist. Otherwise, we wouldn't have different continents and different maps for different continents. Coming to your specific point, culture is what differentiates us. Innovation is what unites us. If we didn't have different culture, we wouldn't have been able to think differently. Today, when we look towards Israel, and Eva said it very beautifully, you guys are working constantly with the innate need for survival to bring out things which was never possible. You go up to an Israeli and you say, I have a difficult problem. They'll say, I'll solve it right now. You say, I have an impossible problem. They'll say, come back to me, I'll take a few days. So impossible to them is nothing, which is the culture. Now you come to India. After 300 years of imperial rule, we've had this entire notion of working under someone. We've always been job-oriented, while you guys have been entrepreneurship-oriented. That's the cultural difference. You look forward to someone to provide you an economic sustainability versus you create economic sustainability are two different things. Is why today, while in the entire Human Development Index on which the world is measured on the living standards of a nation, Israel is at 99.9%, while India is at an 80%. Well, does that make us lesser? Of course not. You guys are a 9 million population. We are a 1.2 billion population. We take your innovation and apply to our nation. That's collaboration. Culture may be different, but that is the very reason we are looking towards you and you're looking towards us to collaborate and create harmony and work towards a better world. The idea of betterment does not come from diversification. The concept of globalization means working in unification, and that's what we're here for. So,
thank you very much. Mr. Duszak, you are working for one of the organizations that is most synonymous, let's say, with globalization. Now, let's say 60, 70 years ago, one of the great curses and the most dangerous words in the old USSR by Stalin was cosmopolitan. And then we had decades that globalists was a fine word. You know, it was a great thing to say about somebody. And these days, again, globalization in some circles, not in this room, but let's say politically, it's becoming a bit more of a curse of somebody out there not patriotic enough, doesn't know the good of the common people. What did you do wrong, you specifically in the World Economic Forum?
So what is globalization? So at the core of globalization, you have openness, collaboration, being able to work with each other. I think there is an understanding across the world that this is good for humanity, that we need to collaborate more, be open more. Now, there is also a recognition across multiple political landscapes that some of those, the way it has been implemented has led in certain countries to more inequality, which is driving some of the political movements that we see in certain countries. So there is definitely a consensus within the international community, including the business community, that we need to take a very careful look at how we apply the different principles of collaboration and openness and dialogue so that more and more people can benefit from this. That we deal with some of the structural problems, some of the systemic problems that we've seen develop. And so
I'd like to jump in for a minute. You didn't see few people saw the backlash against globalization as administered in the recent elections in the United States, etc. Do you think that that people just don't understand the good that globalization brings them, or there is a genuine backlash and you have to deal with it and say, okay, we did something wrong, we have to fix it, not only to explain it better?
I think so. What I meant to say, or what I was saying, is that you need to understand how international cooperation, openness, dialogue is changing, and how to implement it better for the improvement of societies. Now, one thing that is important, we're on a panel on technology, that it is part of the backlash or part of the economic and societal consequences that we're seeing around the world is also around how you apply technology to different industries. So really understanding how technology and other factors, sustainability, are changing global cooperation and cooperation among nations, and really make sure that we put in place new mechanisms, if you will, that can benefit more people is hugely important. I think everyone is recognizing it. Now, obviously, if this was a simple problem, it would be easy to explain. People would just communicate it to the rest of the world. Well, there are no easy answers. I think that's an important thing to recognize. So, yes, we work with the top CEOs and the top politicians. You will be surprised how many questions they have around these things, but it is only through asking the hard questions that you can actually arrive at solutions that are better than the ones in the past. So I think we need a correction, but there are no easy answers, and we need to, back to my point from before, technology is huge. It's impacting a lot of societies. Not enough people understand its consequences. This will be the one simple driver of making sure that we make the correction right.
Thank you very much. Chris, I'd like to ask you, at one time, I'm talking popular culture now because it's sort of a seismograph. In movies, the scientist was the hero. He's the one who brings medicine. He's the one who makes the world better. These days, in the last 30 years, if you look at a scientist in any movie that you like, from Jurassic Park to Terminator, he's the one bringing the plague. He's the one bringing Skynet. He's the bringer of evil, whether by hubris, whether by naivety, whether by intention. So it implies something. How do you tell the people, how do you turn it around in a world where the word vaccine itself, these days, in the world of fake news, etc., people are fighting things that we all thought were beyond any argument at all, and we seem to return to some dark ages. What can be done to tell the people without, coming and lecturing them from above, which of course will then make them only hate you more or us more?
It's a great question, Oren, and I'm now struggling to think of like some science fiction movie where the scientist is the hero, but we'll get to that. I think that the reason that our team works at UNICEF, in UNICEF, within this big bureaucracy, is actually an answer to that question. We love the idea of fixing these problems that I mentioned, and we believe that technology that a lot of our partners are using, that Google or Apple or Facebook might be investing in, can actually provide those solutions. But we also believe that, as you said, that solution can't come from Silicon Valley or from Tel Aviv alone, that solution needs to be built on the ground. I think that the greatest innovation comes from places where you have the most challenges, where you have the most difficulty, that people with the most constraints become the most creative. And one of my mentors said to me once, he's like, Chris, when you're rich, everybody wants to be your friend, so you can be pretty lazy. When you're small and poor, you have to be really creative. And I think what we see is that by investing in places like Malawi, in a drone industry in a country which has very little else in terms of industry, we start to learn the answers to those questions. When we worked with our corridor in Malawi, the first thing that people said to me, we have about 600,000 people underneath the drone corridor. And communities were saying, we don't want drones flying over us because airplanes carry people, drones are small airplanes, drones will carry little people, drones will steal babies. Okay, that's an amazing and very clear logical progression that you can't figure out somebody's going to say if you're in San Francisco. By working with local drone experts, we hired the first drone pilot in Malawi. His name is Godfrey. He's 25 years old, no university degree. He can actually figure out the answers to those challenges. We saw the same thing in Vanuatu. But I think it goes back to these principles of developing the solutions locally. And that's the power that UNICEF gives us to have that global view.
And by the way, one of the things that amazed me, I recently was in Kenya and Uganda to see how, through innovation, people turned their cellular phones to a banking system that bypasses the banking system and does it marvelously. Ziv, I'd like to ask you, there is a famous caricature when somebody is standing with his boss and said, I'd like to give you innovative thinking. What are the guidelines? So if there are guidelines, can governments, and you're a government employee, can governments create innovation? Do they need to, or perhaps just to create the environment to innovation? Or should a government of a country say, look, we receive the taxes from everybody, we should put the taxpayers' money in this area and that area that will benefit the people?
All answers above. I mean, let's start.
That was short.
The government in Israel, and actually I think that's why I'm here right now, what we call Invest in Israel. The government of Israel commit 100% for innovation. How do we do that? First of all, I would like to emphasize innovation is a risky market. Not everyone can get into it without feeling that they need a finance back. Now, why do we have more than 1,400 new startups per year? Because when we can submit them, subsidizing their project, tell them we can help you to take those risks. We make our entrepreneurs there. Now, the government of Israel have more than 50 programs for innovation. Okay, we give money also for joint venture with foreign investors. We have agreements with countries in order to share innovation. We subsidize startups. So if they fail, by the way, they don't need to bring back the money to the government. The government of Israel do not interfere. Do not give any guidelines. Only
some people would argue about that last phrase, but
when we talk about innovation, the market does its own job. Look at that. We are not interfering, by the way, in IT, in cyber, in communication. Those subjects, the market is innovative from day one. Where are we interfering? When it comes to subject that we recognize a problem as a government and we want to solve it. And that's come to the main challenges that I talked before, that the global world is facing those challenges. Now, we first not interfering, we are part of an ecosystem that bring the platforms to people or companies or foreign companies that want the government help. Because we found ourselves obligated and we found ourselves oriented to this innovation because we believe that innovation is the future. We believe what Albert Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge, and we also only help. We do not interfere or make any damage. So the market does its own work.
Thank you very much, Ziva. Dr. Singh, I'd like to return to you. The continuing fight, let's say, between tradition and innovation, right. India and Israel, yeah. Countries with huge pockets, or even pockets, most of the population that is very traditionalist, very religious, want things to be as they were once. How do you deal with it? How do you break out of the pocket of Bangalore, for example, and others to reach the entire country?
Well, again, that's a phenomenal question, and it says that, how do you basically create a balance between tradition and, use that in time, in terms of to be able to reach out for innovation. So let me say what the fourth industrial revolution that we are facing today has three components, Oren: digital, biological, and physical. The digital part, which is basically trying to eliminate the gap of communication beyond boundaries. That is the idea of that part of innovation, saying that how do I eliminate the gaps that exist today, right? When you talk about the religious sentiment, a lot of people have debated Israel being a Jewish democracy. How can a democracy be Jewish? I come from a nation that's a Hindu democracy. There is nothing wrong in being religious. Religion binds you. It's the sentiment that tells you I have a faith in being able to drive or look forward to something. There is nothing wrong in it. If it's pulling you back, if it's telling you that the religion is giving me guidelines not to live better, then there is a problem. In Indian parlance, in Indian example, we are a democratic, we are a federation of state, though not every state is sovereign, but we have 126 dialects, over 75 different cultures existing in harmony in one country. And when we look forward to you guys, we say, hey, you fought for your independence. You don't have very loving neighbors, just like us. We face a battle with China every day, trying to encroach into our territory. Yeah. And you guys don't have either very loving natures. And sometimes, that itself leads to innovation. So tradition is not a bad thing. The digital I talked about, we invented the binary of 0 and 1. Right? Aryabhatta, who was an Indian scientist way back, was the inventor of that. But then you guys took that and transformed it into the physical and biological changes. You made lives better. United States looks to Israel for innovation. Why do you think that happens? Because the innate need for survival have made you guys biologically, physically strong, and we provide the digital transformation. So there's already unification. There is no subjugation. Thank you
very much. Mirek, I'd like to ask you about responsibility. Does the innovator, the entrepreneur, does he have any responsibility other than to the product, to the innovation, to the technology, for society, or he will do his thing, and then let nature, the invisible hand, etc., take its course?
I think it's a very good question. Let me give you an analogy. When we were established in 1971, Professor Schwab basically said the CEO has responsibility not only to his or her shareholders, but also to the stakeholders of society. So I would take that, and I would think this would be the same for a founder of a company that is spearheading a new idea, or an inventor. They have responsibility because technology is more important for society. Now, we are thinking through what that means, and so really how they talk to governments and other societal actors about what is that responsibility, to what degree, under what circumstances. Now, of course, everyone talks about, for example, how you regulate autonomous vehicles, who bears the responsibility in the case of an accident. That's well argued and thought through, but there are other technologies that are facing similar challenges, and so yes, it's important that they assume responsibility. Now, to what degree and under what circumstances, this is what we are working on. If you allow me, I just want to make,
in a word,
yeah, just one thing is about, I think you mentioned the dark place and stuff. I have spent a lot of time working on the Middle East and North Africa, on other economies in the region as well. And I just wanted to emphasize also the opportunity because some of the economies that I work on are traditional economies that are quite closed. So you have a system that is quite close, where you have certain elements that have been, let's say, controlling the economy, and digital, and the arrival of digital is a huge empowering infrastructure that is spurring new energy. And so I just wanted to underscore that there is that opportunity of really freeing people to do more, empower them to do more. On the other hand, you need to make it safer. So if more people are on using digital to do their business or set up an NGO, etc., cyber is important. So how do you make sure that actually the infrastructure that we all use is safer?
Thank you very much. Chris, I'd like to ask you, you're perhaps from all the people here, and I don't want to insult anybody, the most world travel worry of the people here. Do we come to a world where, let's say, the division will not be between countries, but between the rich and the others, also in technology, also in innovation? A world like, let's say, if Ray Kurzweil is right, and in 50, 60, 70 years, there'll be people living not 80, 90 years, but 500, 600, 700 years, and it'll be available, this technology, to the ultra-rich. They'll have the gene therapy, they'll have the artificial intelligence, what have you, and the world will be divided not between countries, rich and poor, but between the ultra-rich and everybody else. How we can see technology bringing people together, closing the gaps, and on the other hand, we see in other places that the gaps are only getting wider.
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer to that. I think that's the trend that we do see. And if Ray Kurzweil is right, we're going to be incredibly bored in 100 years, because we'll all still be 30 years old. But the problem, is this question of information poverty, I think. You can be in a very wealthy city, you can be in New York, and if you have a dumb phone, a basic phone, you don't have access to all of the stuff that I have on my iPhone, and you're information poor. Information poverty is not a constant measure, it's a relative measure. And you have pockets of Toronto or Indianapolis where you have the same poverty indicators that you have in Senegal. These are city blocks of poverty. And if we can understand that, we can start to address it. If we ignore that issue, and if we say, everybody kind of is the same in terms of their opportunity, we really miss out on a chance to stop that. And I think fundamentally, every human being wants access to information, and then opportunity, and then some choice to do something in their life. And if we can't build that bridge, we end up in a place where people have no dignity. And without dignity, you see a world that's really divided. And I think that our partners, our big corporate partners, see that as well, and we're struggling with that issue. But I'll be talking a little bit more about that at the Google tent later this afternoon. There's a plug. And by the way, April and the Incredible Journey, a wonderful French film about a young girl scientist who tries to save the world.
Okay, great. So, Ziva, I'd like to end this terrific discussion with you. Are you, I presume that, I think that I know the answer, but still, I want you to explain it. When you look at the world today, you can see whatever you like to see. Are you an optimist? Not for Israel, not the startup nation, not for, but for the world as a whole. Do we travel in the right direction, in the right track?
I think yes. I'll give you my point of view. I think that this innovation and collaboration and cooperation between countries regarding technologies and problems we become more united. I can see countries that were closed and I can see them open their gates. Look at Japan, for example. For many, many years, Japan didn't let anyone get engaged with its innovation and technology. Okay, Japan knew for many, many years as the mother of technology. Now they are looking up to get an open innovation with the world. We see lots of countries like that. Now I really think that you don't have any other choice because these days, we're facing all those challenges, and it doesn't matter what sector we are. There is no longer traditional sector. Even cars are no longer metal on wheels. They become computer on wheels. So you don't have any other choice. You need to reinvent yourself every single day. You cannot sit on the fence and wait for the dust to settle. Otherwise, you're going to disappear. Now, I think that because of that, everyone is running after that. And you're right, sometimes it looks like it's going to, I don't know, we don't know where it goes to. It's too fast. But I think that those challenges make us stronger, make us clever, and make us better. Because you just said that if we're going to live for 500 years, how governments are going to pay that health cost? They won't be able to do so, otherwise, unless we have those technologies. So a better innovation, innovative countries, joint venture, sharing know-how, ecosystem and spirit and attitude of life of innovation and changing, I think we're in the right direction. We just have to do it right and be sure that we still control, not to lose it and not to take it to bad direction. Still control a little bit, but not much, because the market says its word. And I really think that Israel is one of the leading for that. And I'm happy to see you all because we have joint venture with most of the countries, with India, with everyone. Thank you.
So as usual, we only started to scratch the surface. I want to thank you all. Thank you, Ziva Eger. Thank you, Dr. Somduta Singh. Thank you, Chris Fabian. Thank you, Mirk Dushek. Please, a hand to all the guests. In a few minutes, Dr. Yossi Vardi will have a discussion with Aharon. It will be entertaining and illuminating. Thank you very much for being here and listening. Have a great day.